Guys, it's Ronda and Pat. We're back with another Kirkmont Women's Ministry video for you. We've been going through a series called It's All Under Control by Jennifer Dukes Lee. It's on Right Now Media. And this week we're going to talk about session 5, where she gives us permission to rest. That's the title of her session, and one of the titles of a chapter in the book too. Mm-hmm. So, rest. It sounds good. I mean, and she tells this great story in the video about her daughters raising lambs over one summer, to show in the 4-H thing at school. And she talks about, the sheep learning to recognize the shepherd's voice, right? And that's kind of the way the video goes. But before we get to maybe raising sheep or recognizing our shepherd's voice, I want to talk about the idea of rest, because this is kind of almost a joke nowadays, maybe a little bit trite. Jen Wilkin talks about this like, come to me all you who are weary and heavy laden and I will give you rest. But she talks about we want a vacation. We want Jesus. I want a nap, like this is the rest. But that's not the rest he means, is it? No. So.
I loved her story at the beginning because she talked, first of all, I grew up in the suburbs. I have no concept of what it means to do anything to do with farming. And what she talks about is that her daughters get these lambs to raise so that they can show them, which to me, we go to the county fair here so I can watch them showing lambs. But these lambs didn't warm up to the girls, and so finally one of her daughters brought a chair and set it in the doorway of where the lambs were staying and started just reading.
Yeah.
And she was reading Pride and Prejudice to the lambs.
Because why not?
Because why not? The trick to that was the lambs grew to know her voice and began to come to her. And it's basically what Jesus tells us is, my sheep know my voice. And so we need to get to the point where we know his voice. And part of what he tells us is, come to me and I will give you rest. And the rest is not, much as I would like to think it's, sitting down with mocha or sitting down and planning a vacation. That's not the kind of rest that we're talking about here. It's a rest of stepping away from the busyness and the chatter and all the stuff that we think we need to be running around doing all the time, when it's not what the Lord has called us to.
Yeah. She talks about true rest isn't a lack of activity, it's about the state of your soul, right? And it isn't a place, it's a person that you know, right? In the book of Hebrews, the author is very clear about, not being like the Israelites who didn't enter into the rest, right? Because of disobedience. So we're back to surrender and obedience, right? Being that the way in which we enter rest, but it's, ceasing from our own efforts to earn salvation and striving again, within ourselves to do the work that Christ has done. That work is complete, right? That activity we can certainly cease from. Mm-hmm. But we get so busy with our own agendas, I think, a lot of times, that we stop to ask God about his. And it's really, we can only be restful when we are doing what he has asked us to do and, on board with his agenda, and then all of that frantic sort of, busyness that we fill our lives with, because it feels like we're doing something then. But that's not rest for our souls, right?
I have to say, I am a person who loves lists. I have a to-do list for every single day, and I never get through my to-do list because there's too much on it.
I just keep rewriting mine.
Yeah, for anyone to, I have it on my computer. It just shows up again every day. And, I keep hoping that I will get through all the items on my to-do list. It never happens. No, But it's hard for us to wait it's, I want to take an action and have something happen and have it be done, and I can check it off my list, get the endorphins that come from making that check mark.
Do you write things on your list? If you didn't have it on your list but you do it, I write it down so I can check it off.
So you can check, absolutely, because you get endorphins from that. Yes, I do that.
Okay, good.
But it's hard for us because sometimes when we're waiting, we aren't seeing anything happen. And we think if we don't see any action, that God's not at work.
Yeah.
And it's not a case, that's not the case at all.
No.
The truth is, while we're waiting, God is still at work.
Yeah.
And we can trust that that is happening, that he is moving his plan forward, not only for us, but for his kingdom.
Yeah. Often his plan is bigger, in reference to the waiting. She talks about the story of Lazarus and, Mary and Martha, and they tell Jesus, hey, he's sick, can you come? And he doesn't right away, right? And they're left in this uncomfortable waiting period and the discomfort of watching him die. And Jesus, is sad when he returns, but he knows, this timetable is better, right? Because you're not going to see me heal someone the way you've seen me heal all these other people. You're going to see me raise someone from the dead. The whole town, the whole countryside is impacted by that miracle. And so, when we're waiting, it doesn't mean God's not working. It just means we need to wait. His timetable is better, and that's a hard one because, like you say, the inactivity. I mean, do you have to sit on your hand? I almost have to sit on my hands sometimes when God has asked me to wait for something because I don't do it well, but I need to listen, right? I need to get on His agenda.
And I think that's true for our whole society right now. I can't think of anybody I know who's a good waiter. Not like a server, but who's good at just saying, okay, this isn't happening, and so I will put it on the back burner, and I will watch for what God is doing, and when the time is right, He will take care of it.
Yeah.
That's not what we're trained to do or to be.
No. Well, so let's talk about social availability. She has harsh words in the book. She talks about we have all these things to make our life simpler and everything, but yet we're running around on our Bluetooth headsets, talking to a million different people and doing all this stuff. She says social availability has become our soul's adversary. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you see this, I guess?
I've seen it for myself.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of conversations lately with people where we've talked about how sometimes we just need to step back from it and say, okay, I am not going to check Facebook. I'm not going to look at Instagram. I'm not going to post on Twitter. I'm just going to leave it alone. And I know there are a whole bunch of other social media platforms that I don't even know about. Don't need to know about. Right. But it's sometimes the chatter there becomes so loud, so deafening that there is no chance of rest. It gets your adrenaline revved up because you're constantly thinking about, what are people saying? What are they talking about? And sometimes what they're talking about seems innocuous, but it's one more distraction from what has the Lord called me to for this day, for this time. And I get caught up in it just as much as anybody else. I love seeing what people are well, mostly. I love seeing what people are doing or talking about. I can't make the blanket statement that I love seeing it because sometimes I don't love it. But it creates in us this constant need to push and to move and to go, and that's not healthy for us. Yeah.
She uses a phrase many times in the book of pause, don't push, right? And that's waiting. And I think a lot of times we can hear God telling us to wait. We just want to argue and and say, well, that's ridiculous. Obviously, you see I have to do this,
Yeah.
And there is always somebody else who needs to be fed or clothed or changed, or, somebody's needs that must be met, right? But he's not really saying, again, ceasing from activity, but being purposeful in your activity, right? You don't want to be so busy that you lose track of, not so busy that you can't hear God's voice, I guess I should say. And then, you need to check with God occasionally on your agenda, right? That whole surrender, the control, what we've been talking about, going to God each day and saying, what would you have me do? And doing what he tells you. Because that's really where we're going to find rest. When we are married to the kingdom agenda and his desires for our life, then even if we are functioning at pretty high capacity and people would call us busy, we are going to find rest and fulfillment in working in conjunction with him, right? I mean, that's really where we find the rest.
Well, she gives a list of some basic truths, and these really hit me. I am not everybody's solution. What do you mean? How could that be?
How could that be? I'm pretty sure I have a T-shirt that says I am.
So, no, we are not everybody's solution to every problem. I don't have to be in control of everything or be in charge of all the outcomes. We've talked about this before. We're not in charge of the outcomes. We just simply aren't. And her third one is, I don't have to put myself in the center of everything, nor must I allow myself to be dragged there.
I've never had that happen. I don't know what you're talking about.
So I think it's important for us to remember that it is crucial for us to remember that God is in control and that we aren't. So it's okay for us to step back and say, I'm going to wait. I'm going to take some time to rest. I'm an introvert, and I know that I'm an introvert because when I spend time with a lot of people, I love having time with people. I've so missed that during the lockdown. But after I've had time with people, I need to come away from people and take some time to recharge because my energy is depleted. Well, that's an important part of rest, is recognizing I need to be still. And I need to remember, God tells us, be still and know that I am God. It's not just being still, it's remembering the relationship.
She uses another, just because I'm in the throes of gardening right now, she uses another pruning analogy, that God prunes us. He prunes away, he may prune away good because he's looking for even better, and she said that God prunes all of us, but achievers, which I might fall into that category, achievers try immediately to fill the spaces. I kind of do that. If I pull something out of the garden, I'm like stuffing things back in, and then next year I'm going, oh my gosh, I overplanted, because things are flourishing. So yeah, don't be afraid to let him prune, and don't be so anxious to fill the space. Like, just because he's asked you to let go of something, don't start, calling all your friends and going, well, now I can do this, this, and this, and this, right? Because the odds are he's pruning that space in your schedule because he has plans for you. So let him do that. Let him fill that space rather than filling it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So permission to rest. Not necessarily a nap, but I fully endorse the idea of a nap every now and again. But yeah, find rest in Christ's work in your atonement and his agenda, and getting on board with the kingdom agenda, because that's where we're going to find our peace. We could still be plenty busy, but we can find joy and rest in working for him. It's a good thing. Okay, next week will be session 6. That will be the wrap up for this series, and so we'll see you then. Thanks.